Hey everyone, my name is Poisonblade and I hope all of you are doing well today. So for today I'm going to be building a Red Kangaroo Habitat because Frontier sent me an early copy of the Australia pack, so by the time I'm recording this it shouldn't be out, but by the time you guys are seeing it, it should be out. So I'm going to approach today's video the same way as I did with the South America pack, in which I'm going to first talk about my positives and negatives about the pack, and then I'm going to start talking about the build. But just so that you guys don't have to go into this build blindly, it's kind of a basic build for me. It's, as I said, it's going to be a Red Kangaroo Habitat, but the architecture is going to be somewhat inspired by our Aboriginal architecture, but then with like a modern twist on it. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. So my positives and negatives. I'm going to try and keep this short, but me being a squirrel, that's most likely going to result in this being half of the video. But I'm again going to try and keep this short. But my positives, because I want to start with the positives, is of course the animals. Beautifully animated, and yeah, there's this thing of like, I expected different animals, and this is kind of actually a thing with Frontier, that there's always like one or two animals that I did not expect. I mean, I expected kangaroos and koalas of course, but for these, well, I'm just going to start with the start. In the Arctic pack I did not expect the tall sheep. With the South America pack I did not expect the giant anteater, although I started to love the giant anteater. And with the Australia pack, I did not expect the dingo and the, I'm just going to call it the funky looking turkey bird, because honestly I've forgotten its real name. But I also just don't want to call it anything besides funky looking turkey bird. And my Discord has already suggested that I shouldn't call it a funky looking turkey bird and should call it by its real name, but I'm a stubborn squirrel. So if I have my mind set on something, I am not going to steer away from it. So funky looking turkey bird it is, but then we also of course have the dingo. So funky looking turkey bird is probably the biggest. Did not expect this. And then the dingo is sort of I like the animal, but honestly I did not expect it to be like one of the like main 4 animals that you would think of with Australia. So for the funky looking turkey bird, when I think of a bird and Australia, I just think of like an emu, but then I can see the reason that that might be a little bit too close to an ostrich. Although I always consider an emu like the aggressive uncle to an ostrich. So yeah, I can see why Frontier did not want to put an emu, because it might be too close to the ostrich. And then the dingo, again, as I said, it's kind of like, did not expect it. I'm not mad about it. I'm not like disappointed by it, but I'm kind of like meh about the dingo. But the kangaroos and the koalas, beautiful. And I just have these, let's just say, a soft spot for tiny animals. Like koalas, red pandas, squirrels, otters, beavers. Well, they're not really tiny, but they're small. Compared to most animals that we have in game, they're small. And that's kind of a suggestion. It's not really a negative or a positive, but I really just want more small animals that can like fill in the nooks and crannies of your zoo. Because we have a lot of large animals. I mean, polar bear being the one exemplary of that, because, or the best example of it, because when that animal got released, nobody could build a habitat for it, because here's the thing, Frontier wants to make Plant Zoo as more of like conservation efforts and not, well, of course the zoo, but conservation is a high priority on how they want the animals to be implemented. But yeah, some animals were kind of like, yeah, you can't really use this in a zoo, because you can't have like the size of like the natural habitat for like a polar bear. So yeah, koalas and the kangaroos, love the animals, and koalas especially have like a soft spot, and I think there would honestly be a riot if those 2 animals weren't there. Honestly, I did expect an emu instead of funky looking turkey bird. And of course I wanted to see like a platypus or something, but again, like I have a soft spot for small animals. I mean, I call myself a squirrel, so that should be expected. Anyways, so besides that, of course, when it comes to pieces, I'm a builder, so I love new pieces being added. The one thing that I expected, because you will see this in this build actually as well, but there's a lot of like iron pieces, and this is a thing with so far all of the packs. They are themed to like a certain area, of course, because they are continent packs. So all of the pieces are supposed to really fit well into like an Australia biome, which I'm going to go into a little bit later. But they are supposed to just fit in with like an Australian theme. But they are not like completely rigidly stuck in that theme. And especially like for, let's say, a steampunk zoo, or if you want to build like a Fallout inspired zoo, this could be a perfect pack because there's a lot of like iron or steel works. There's a lot of like distressed iron. Like, again, if you want something post-apocalyptic or just very industrial looking, you can easily go Fallout with this pack. And then of course there's a lot of like pieces that do really fit in more with just Australia and that area. There's of course a lot of pieces with like emus and koala bears on it, because those are the main thing. Well, emu. Again, this really shows that I really wanted emus. Well, not really wanted emus, but I expected them more than the funky looking turkey birds. Again, I'm not going to call it anything but a funky looking turkey bird. But yeah, there are a lot of pieces with like, when it comes to decoration, which has funky looking turkey birds, dingoes, kangaroos, and koalas. And then you of course have the lizard as well. I forgot to mention that one, because this is just my thing. I don't really count exhibit animals as actual animals, because as a player, you don't really have that much interaction with those. You put them in a box, and then most of the time you spend more on like how to somewhat put that box in your zoo without it looking weird. Whereas with an animal that's in a habitat, you spend more time with the actual animal. So anyways, that's a little bit of like the positives. And then there's a sort of like a neutral one, but this seems to be the course that Frontier is setting, is that they are first going to like circle the globe, or at least circle all the continents. So that means that, let's just say that the Arctic pack is one continent, and then there will be 4 more. So I hope that the next one is going to be like a European pack, because, well, I just want European animals, because by now Europe and North America are, I think, the least represented in the game. So I hope that the next one is going to be like a European pack, but I don't know for sure. I do know though, because I saw a tweet of Aston Wolf, and I don't have the knowledge to actually look this one up, like really like look into the Steam files. But there's supposed to be already another pack in the works. Like there's some like Steam idea already claimed by Frontier. So yeah, I'm really hopeful that the next pack is going to be a European pack, but I don't know for sure. So that's just going to be pure speculation. But here comes this sort of negative side of this pack, and also of like this like circling the globe. There's no gameplay changes in this pack. It's in the way that's like built up, it's strikingly similar, of course, to the other packs, because there's no real gameplay. There's animals added, there's scenery pieces added, but that's mostly it. Like there is the free update, but I'm not going to really be talking about it, because that's not what this video is about. But in the pack itself, there's not that much when it comes to like gameplay that has really been changed. So that's kind of a bummer. And with like the core set on like circling the globe first, or the continents first, I do think that we will have to wait a bit until actual gameplay gets changed, because yeah, the funky looking turkey birds don't fly, and well, we don't have any fish, so no aquatic stuff, no aviaries or such. So yeah, that's the sad thing. Like the pack for builders is great. If you just really want these, well, mostly the two animals, the kangaroos and the koalas, then it's great. But if you're really looking for like changes in gameplay, then this pack doesn't really offer that. So that's for me like the main negative. And then there's also like some things of like some pieces, and of course I think I said this before with the animals, but everyone wants different animals, everyone wants different pieces. So, you know, complaining about, oh, I wanted this animal, or oh, I wanted this piece, it's kind of like complaining into an empty or bottomless pit, because there's a million things, there's a million animals on this world. So complaining about like, oh, this animal isn't in there, isn't really going to be working or doing anything. I've realized myself as well, because I want emus, maybe someone wanted this funky looking turkey bird. Again, I probably should call it by its real name, but I'm a stubborn squirrel. I'm going to refuse to call it by its real name. And that's my pros and negatives about this pack. And as I've already said, yes, this ended up being like 3/4 of the entire video so far already. Again, I predicted that already. But anyway, so for the actual build, so just going to quickly wrap up like positives and negatives. Great for builders, great if you really want these specific animals, but if you're looking for gameplay changes, this isn't going to really impact your game after you've built habitats for those like particular animals or have built buildings with those particular pieces. But for the actual build, so as I said, it's going to be a little bit inspired by like Aboriginal architecture. So I looked up actually like how their like houses looked, but also look like. So the circular domes that the trees are set in are somewhat inspired by like their huts, and then the main structure, which is like 80% of today's build, is also somewhat inspired by their huts, or more, it looks a bit more like a tent. So the actual like support structure of that roof, which like with the roof, I'm just like, how can I use this in any other way than a roof? But I can actually see it being used as like a wall. Like if you want to build a modern wall with those roof pieces, that could really work. And I actually love the detail that's like on the inside. There's like somewhat of like a support, like weaving structure to the inside. So it's not just like a blank white thing on the inside. But yeah, it's a little bit difficult of like, how do I use this anywhere but here? So some pieces, again, are a little bit more heavily tied to the pack and aren't as versatile. And I'm not sure what comes with like the free update and what comes with the pack. Most of the actual, well, scenery pieces or like the plants and such, I think come with the pack. But I'm not sure, because I got the pack and the free update like early on, like immediately, so I had no idea of like, oh, is this with the pack or with the update? Because I know with the update we get vending machines, which this is my con about the vending machines. In Planet Coaster, they were like somewhat buildings on themselves. In Planet Zoo, they sort of work like benches, like they stick to a path. You can't place them just off the path, or yeah, they just work like benches. But anyway, so for the build, I was somewhat inspired, as I said, by Aboriginal architecture, but there was this, I forgot the name of the building, but there was like a museum in Australia with, well, in regards to like Aboriginals and their like architecture, culture and such. So I was more inspired by that, and tried to have like some like features such as that roof looking a little bit like a tent, and the, well, shapes in which most of the trees are set in, not in the front, but mostly to the side. Those are also inspired by like their huts. So I didn't want to really make this like a huge build, because I have plans for that with the koala habitat because, again, I have a soft spot for tiny, fluffy animals. And it doesn't help that I call myself a squirrel. Although me calling myself a squirrel is not because of being it being a fluffy animal. It's more just because I get carried away with things. I mean, the pro and negatives about about this pack was a huge example of that. Like for some reason, whenever I talk about myself being a squirrel, I always feel the need to like explain why I do that, because I know that for some people it might be like, why are you doing that? But anyway, so I really like the pack. Again, it really is well suited for like a steampunk or like a post-apocalyptic build. But I can really see it being really useful, especially like all the steel and iron pieces for a modern build, which is what I've planned for the koala build, because yeah, I'm not going to give away what I'm going to be building, but it's inspired by a certain building in Australia, and I'm not talking about the Sydney Opera House because I'm never going to be building that thing. Not because I hate it, but just because I think it's the obvious build to do, and I don't want to build the obvious builds. But anyway, that's mostly it regarding today's build. So it's a little bit more of a smaller build for me, or a more basic build for me, which might not be a basic build for you guys. But for me, this is kind of simple and just like, you know, it hits all the points and it looks, well, in my own humble opinion, great. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you do and want to see more, of course, liking and subscribing is a great way to show support. And I wish you all an amazing day. Bye bye.